Discover 4 spine-chilling true horror stories. Sinister secrets exposed from haunted places. The night descended like a thick shroud, casting an unsettling silence over the usually vibrant suburb of Ohio. Lisa gripped the steering wheel of her old sedan, heart racing, mind muddled with exhaustion from her double shift at the diner. The hum of her car felt deafening, and as she turned the corner onto their street, unease stirred in her gut. Her home loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, a stark contrast to the cheerful houses around it. There were no lights on, no laughter echoing, just hollow whispers of the wind that chilled her bones. Once inside, shadows danced voraciously, twisting around corners as if eager to swallow her whole. Exhausted, Lisa slipped off her shoes and collapsed onto the worn couch, but sleep refused to claim her. The air was heavy, thick with the whispers she'd begun to hear more frequently, soft, beckoning, calling her name in haunting tones. They felt real, each syllable scraping against her fraying nerves. Was her mind playing tricks on her again? Maybe it was the long shifts, the lack of sleep yet. The more she tried to dismiss it, the clearer the whispers grew. One evening, in a moment of idle curiosity, Lisa ventured into the attic, sifting through her late grandmother's belongings. There, nestled among dusty boxes, she stumbled upon a stack of vintage letters, their edges yellowing with age. As she peeled them open, the words spoke of a dark history hidden beneath the facade of her perfect suburb. The land had once housed an asylum infamous for its barbaric treatments. The horrors written in crimson ink seeped into her mind like a grotesque shadow cast over her home. As the days blurred into restless nights, panic began to solidify. Ryan, her once joyful teenage son, transformed. He started shrieking at shadows that darted across hallways, claiming he could hear whispers echoing his name. "Mom! It's calling me!" The terror in his voice wrenched Lisa's heart, sending waves of adrenaline coursing through her veins. The neighbors who once smiled and waved now avoided her, their laughter receding into quiet as she passed. What were they hiding? Why did their eyes dart away from hers as if she were a ghost? Determined to protect her son, Lisa delved into the past of their unsuspecting town. She discovered disturbing documents in the library detailing bizarre rituals, sacrifices for protection, made by founders who once smiled and welcomed newcomers like her. The laughter of children turned into a haunting echo, as Lisa realized that the very fabric of their suburb was interwoven with darkness, weaving a net of secrets and stifled fears. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the sun set one fateful night, the clouds unleashed a storm, casting shadows that danced like malevolent figures in the corners of her mind. Lisa raced through slick streets, her heart pounding with panic. She could hear Ryan's terrified screams slicing through the incessant rain like a knife. Bursting through their front door, she froze. There in the living room, her son stood motionless, entranced. His wide eyes gleamed with an uneasy understanding, staring at something just beyond sight. The air crackled with electricity, a visceral chill snaking down her spine, warning her that she had crossed an unseen line. As she stepped closer, the shadows twisted around them like a sinister embrace. It struck her with a sickening realization. The predator wasn't outside lurking in the darkness, it was already here, tangled in their lives, and the whispers had only just begun to reach a fever pitch. With fear pulsing through her like a drum in the night, Lisa faced the unfathomable truth. What lurked in the corners of their home was more than just whispers. It was a battle for her son's very soul. The howling wind rattled the windows as Lisa stepped forward, her heart drumming a frantic rhythm. The shadows stretched and recoiled like living tendrils, and the air thickened with a tangible darkness. "Ryan," she called out, the urgency in her voice barely masking her terror. She reached for her son, the calmness of his gaze unsettling her more than if he had been screaming. "Mom," he muttered, his voice nearly a monotone. "It said I have to listen." His eyes shimmered, but there was something else in them, an emptiness that didn't belong to her boy. A whisper curled around Lisa's name, sweet yet malevolent, echoing with promises she couldn't understand. "No, you can't listen to it," she shouted, but deep down, she felt the pull, an insidious invitation tugging at her sanity. The room shivered with anticipation, as if waiting for an unholy pact to be forged. Ryan backed away slowly, his eyes never leaving the dark corner of the room. "It knows you, Mom. It knows about Grandma." He paused, lips pressing together, some internal struggle raging within him. "It said we can be together forever." The hairs on Lisa's neck prickled. Her grandmother had spoken of things best left buried, of a darkness that had lingered, even after her passing. The old family legends whispered of ancient rituals to keep horrors at bay, sacrifices made to bind the darkness beneath the surface. What if it had never left? "Stop this, Ryan," Lisa pleaded, desperation puncturing her voice. "You're stronger than this." She stepped forward again, fueled by motherly instinct, trying to break through the fog of whatever had seized her child. The shadows twisted violently as if recoiling from her resolve. Ryan's eyes flickered, hesitating for a split second before the shadowy figures surged back to claim him. Gone was her son. In his place stood a vessel, a pawn of something beyond her comprehension. "Mom, run!" he screamed suddenly, his voice laced with panic that felt misplaced. Even his body trembled under some unseen weight. Lisa hesitated, torn between fleeing and fighting. But as she glanced toward the doorway, it was too late. The room convulsed. She caught a glimpse of the dark shape that had been concealed within the corner, an embodiment of despair and rage materializing before her, mocking her attempts to protect her son. A sense of urgency clawed at her insides. Frantic, she turned back to Ryan. "I want to leave you." Her fingers curled around his wrist, feeling the warmth of his skin, pulling him to her. But the shadows clawed at her, thick and suffocating. A cold mist swirled around them, and she felt a slithering dread seep into her bones. "Mom, you have to go. It's too late for me." His voice cracked, tears welling in his eyes. "No." She cursed the darkness rising around them, consuming every shred of warmth. "I want to abandon you." The whispering crescendoed, frantic and wild, drowning out her thoughts. It promised safety, offered salvation by a twisted pact she couldn't comprehend. Shadows lunged toward her, and Lisa's breath caught in her throat as she felt herself being pulled, an unseen hand gripping her soul, drawing her further from reality. And then she heard it, her grandmother's voice, a distant echo, warning her about the price of ignorance. Lisa's heart thundered as the realization dawned on her. They were not alone. Something was feeding off their fear. In one swift motion, Lisa yanked Ryan to her, forcing a connection as tight as a lifeline. "We fight together," she screamed, determination igniting within the suffocating fear. Then, as a burst of light illuminated the room, a deafening silence fell. What had she unleashed? Suddenly, something shifted behind them, a presence even darker than the shadows themselves. One that had been waiting patiently to consume them both. What price would they have to pay to escape its grasp? The light flickered, illuminating twisted shadows around them, and Lisa felt her resolve solidifying into something fierce. She pulled Ryan closer, feeling his quick breaths against her skin, anchoring her sanity amid the chaos. Whatever dwelled in the darkness would not claim them without a fight. "Ryan, listen to me," she said, her voice steady despite the tremors coursing through her body. "You have to concentrate. We need to remember what Grandma taught us. Together we can push it back." Ryan blinked, confusion wrestling with the fog clouding his thoughts. For a brief moment, her son seemed to emerge from that haunted place behind his eyes. But he stammered, a flicker of fear escaping him. "What if it's too strong? It's trying to trick us," Lisa urged, forcing herself to breathe. "We can't let it in. Not again." The shadows pulsed, and the echo of malevolent laughter rippled through the air. Lisa felt it scratching against her mind, whispering her secrets and fears. Images of the past flashed: a broken family, years of sorrow, and the sacrificial echoes of her grandmother's voice. "Choose wisely, Lisa," it warned. "You want to save him, but at what cost?" The walls shuddered, as if the very foundation of their home reacted to the threat encroaching upon them. "Don't listen," she shouted, her hands gripping Ryan's shoulders, as if he might float away into the darkness. "Focus on the love we share, the stronger." Suddenly, the darkness surged, wrapping around her limbs and squeezing until her breath came in gasps. A chill gripped her heart, and shadows morphed into nightmarish faces, twisted in anguish and torment. Every scream they had ever silenced filled her ears, drowning out the remnants of her thoughts. "Mom!" Ryan shouted, voice high and desperate. His palms pressed against his temples, and Lisa could see the struggle etched on his face. "I can't. It's too loud. Fight it," she screamed, vulnerability creeping into her voice. "You're stronger than it. You are my son." For a heartbeat, their eyes locked. Her steady resolve poured into him, her will fighting against the encroaching despair. And then, from the depths of that darkness, a shrill cry echoed, growing louder, swirling around them like a taunting gale. It was the essence of their worst fears materializing into something tangible. "Stay close," Lisa urged, tightening her grip. "Whatever happens, we do this together." The cold mist thickened, a fog of despair wrapping tightly around them. Swallowing the last vestiges of warmth, shadows lunged forward, hungry for what light remained. Lisa felt a split second of doubt knife through her thoughts. But then, Ryan spoke, words emerging from the depth of the chaos. "Mom, the ritual. The one Grandma taught us about, the sacrifice." His voice was steady now, a beacon cutting through the haze. Lisa clung to it as the pieces clicked into place. The price they had to pay was not in blood, but in acknowledgement of their shared love, a power greater than the darkness. She let out a shaky breath. "We remember her. We declare our bond and reject its hold." She closed her eyes, focusing on boundless warmth and memories of joy, fighting against the terror. The shadows writhed, shrieking in anger. Inside, Lisa felt the pulsating pressure of doubt, longing to break through her walls. But then Ryan's voice came again together. "Mom. Forever." Suddenly, the room erupted in blinding light, a radiant beacon of love cutting through the encroaching gloom. But just as quickly, darkness lashed out in retaliation, obliterating the light and swallowing them whole. Panic clawed at Lisa's chest as she felt the temperature drop, ice creeping along her skin. "What?" she breathed, struggling against the cold tendrils wrapping around her throat. And then, the world warped. The once familiar walls of their home twisted into something grotesque. Faces they recognized morphed into those of her ancestors, their eyes hollow, mouths curling into cruel smiles. "Make your choice," a voice echoed, deep and resonating with a chilling promise. "One of you will pay." Time froze. In that moment, Lisa felt the weight of the horrifying decision pressing down on her. Sacrifice was imminent, but which of them would it claim? Would they both emerge as victims of a darkness far older than them? Or could love hold strong against the inevitable? Everything teetered on the brink, and as Lisa's heart raced, the shadows laughed, 1,000 voices mocking. What would they have to sacrifice to emerge intact? The shadows twisted and danced, the air thick with despair. Lisa's heart raced as the chilling voice echoed, daring them to confront their fate. The grotesque faces of her ancestors loomed larger, the hollow eyes piercing through her soul. The witches from her grandmother's stories seemed to weave their way through the gloom, and the laughter of the damned echoed in her ears. "Mom, we have to decide. I can't do this." Ryan's voice cut through the darkness, raw and terrified. Lisa felt his grip tighten, desperation fueling his words. "What if we give it what it wants?" "No." Lisa shook her head fiercely, pushing the thought away. "We will not negotiate. We refuse to be its pawns." The air crackled as the shadows surged closer, curling around Ryan's legs like serpents, pulling him toward the nightmarish make-believe they had awakened. She couldn't let him go. Panic coursed through her veins as she felt the tendrils tighten. Time was running out. Ryan, listen carefully, she said, her voice quaking. We need to think of something bigger. Something that reminds us who we are. Our family. Our love is the key. Her son faltered, uncertainty flashing across his face. He was being torn apart from the inside. What if it really has to be one of us? He whispered, dread clouding his expression. What if it wants me to offer you? The thought pierced through her, despair slapping against her like a wave. No, we don't let it dictate our choices. She reached down, gripping his hands in hers tightly. We will remember our past, our grandmother's strength. The stories she told. We're stronger together. We can't turn on each other. For a moment, a flicker of determination shone in Ryan's eyes. Together he murmured, tracing the space between them as if provoked. The shadows shrieked, wrapping tighter, beckoning them toward the darkness that promised oblivion. You must choose. The voice echoed again, booming like thunder. Failure to choose will ensure your eternal suffering. The futility of it all began to dawn on Lisa, and she felt the anchor of her resolve tremble. What do you want from us? She shouted into the shadows, daring them, her voice shaking but defiant. Tell us. In that instant, the darkness pulsed with renewed power, a braying laugh that swelled into the air around them. Suddenly, a scene materialized. An image of their family gathered around the kitchen table, laughter bright, Grandma's spirited stories. The warmth of the home, it splintered and cracked, transforming into a room filled with sorrow and shadows. They are weak, the entity hissed, the joy fading from the vision. They could not protect you. Only one can hold the power to sever the bond and escape. Lisa's heart plummeted to her stomach, the terrible weight of the choice looming. No, we won't let you destroy us. The shadows hissed, desperate and furious. Then choose. One or the other, or be lost forever. The room spun, and Lisa gasped as a startling clarity rushed through her mind. The truth was more horrifying than she ever imagined. True love demanded sacrifice, but not of themselves. It meant letting go of something crucial. With a sudden rush of certainty, an image of her grandmother's ever-watchful gaze flared in her memory, a warning. Sacrifices aren't always physical, she thought, her heart racing. Sometimes they're about letting go of fears, the past. She glanced at Ryan, the innocence of his youth tugging at her heart. We will confront it together. But as she spoke those words, the shadows screeched in rage. You think you can escape your fates? You will pay dearly for defiance. The laughter fell silent as darkness surged around them, defining their choice as chaos consumed their world. Just as they braced for impact, an unseen force ripped through the veil of shadows, momentarily illuminating their faces. Lisa and Ryan felt a desperate shimmer of hope pierce through the heavy fog. Fight! Lisa shouted, racing toward the center of darkness. Let go of what weighs you down. But as they pushed against the grim stream, laughter began anew, echoing as if mocking. Their resolve. The abyss narrowed and twisted, ready to consume them whole. Would their love be enough to withstand the storm? Or would the darkness swallow them, leaving only echoes of their sacrifice lingering in the night? The relentless shadows watched, their eyes eager, awaiting the choice that would seal their fate. The world spun around them, darkness clawing at their minds. Shadows twisted, contorting in ways that sent shivers down Lisa's spine. The laughter grew louder, a cacophony of mocking jeers that felt like ice piercing her skin. She could hear Ryan's breath hitch, a gasping sound drowning in fear. Hold on to me, she shouted, refusing to falter. They had to stick together. She knew that. Yet the whispers in the dark tugged at her thoughts, weaving in doubts, picking at every thread of her resolve. Mom, it's getting stronger, Ryan cried, eyes wide, reflecting the shadows that slammed into them. The air felt electrified, as if the darkness were alive, hungry and eager. In an explosion of hollow laughter, the shadows promised him tranquility if he just surrendered. Give in. Let us take your pain, they hissed, a seductive promise that curled around him like smoke. It felt like the worst kind of betrayal, eroding trust and hope. No, Lisa screamed, pulling him closer. Don't listen to them. This is magic built on fear, not love. But the shadows surged again, wrapping tendrils of guilt and regret around her heart. They held memories every moment of weakness, every argument over groceries, every unspoken frustration. The entity roared, drowning out her thoughts. Your love is weak and broken. They cannot keep you safe. Choose one or be condemned to this darkness forever. Lisa's mind raced. Were they stronger apart? No, they needed each other. She felt the shadows scraping against her skin, threatening to rip them asunder. Ryan, think of Grandma, the stories she told us. Love is more than sacrifice. It's resilience. But the shadows didn't relent. They shifted and stirred, wrapping around Ryan tighter. The air turned thick and suffocating, the chorus of mockery rising, pushing against her sanity. His eyes glanced at the approaching figures, distorted faces appearing among the writhing shadows, ancestors' visages molded from despair, mouths curled in sadness and judgment. The weight of their disapproval bore down upon him, pressing on every heartbeat. Ryan. Her voice cracked with urgency. Remember your dreams. Remember the light of the campfire, your first bike ride. You are not just a prisoner. You are our future. You hold the strength to fight. The shadows recoiled slightly at her words, an almost tangible retreat. But then, with a malicious shriek, they surged forward again. You think memories can hold back darkness? You must concede or suffer greatly. Never. Lisa shouted, fury igniting within her. We will not let you twist our memories into chains. With a flash of desperation, she thrust all her warmth and love into Ryan's hands, a tangible energy coursing between them. This is us. This is what we are fighting for. The shadows froze momentarily, disbelief flickering briefly in their dark eyes. Then, with renewed rage, they lunged, seeking to tear them apart. Time hung heavy, suffocating. The very air crackled with anticipation, a battle of wills teetering on the edge of calamity. Lisa clenched her fists, resolving to fight with every fiber of her being. Together, she gasped, feeling the warmth envelop them, a protective barrier rising against the consuming void. We are stronger as one. But as they pushed back, the shadows roared. A blinding light erupted, illuminating the chaos as figures emerged, almost human yet twisted. Lisa's breath caught. Who are they? Ryan stammered, eyes wide with terror. Those who failed, echoed a voice steeped in sorrow, rising above the din. Those who chose wrong. And then it hit her, the realization that they weren't just facing their darkest fears. They were confronting the remnants of souls lost to the darkness. The cost of failure loomed like a storm on the horizon, and she wasn't sure they could win. But on the edges of that realization, an ember of hope flickered yet again. Would it be enough to light their way through the shadows? The darkness trembled, its pulse quickening as if aware of their fragile determination. Choose or be consumed. And just like that, everything spiraled into chaos. Would they cling to light or plunge willingly into the abyss? The tension hung frozen in the air, leaving them with one final question: what was the price of their defiance? The shadows lunged with relentless fury, a tidal wave of darkness crashing against Lisa and Ryan. She felt her heart pound in her chest, each thump louder than the tumult around them. The light flickered, casting ghostly reflections on the faces of the souls trapped within their dark prison. The distorted figures, once familiar, now wore masks of anguish and sorrow, their mouths agape in silent screams. Don't look at them, Lisa shouted, as the shadows pressed closer. They want you to lose hope. Ryan clenched her hand tightly, his knuckles white. Mom, I can't take it. His voice trembled, fear wrapping around him like a tight rope. Every whispered taunt from the abyss threatened to drown his spirit. The biting air wrapped around them like an icy shroud. Lisa felt her resolve weaken for an instant as memories of failed moments surfaced, the late nights spent worrying, the fights over bills, the moments when she wished for escape. Would they succumb to the very fears they fought against? Fight it, Ryan. Remember the laughter. Focus on the love, she urged, forcing her voice to stay strong. Though the shadows twisted in eager anticipation around them, their laughter growing into a deafening cacophony. Think about how we've overcome together before. But the shadows were relentless. You are alone. He does not care. He will abandon you. The words slashed through the air like a knife, and she saw the doubt creep into Ryan's eyes. No, you can't believe them. Lisa's voice broke, desperation pushing against the tide of fear. Suddenly, in the height of the chaos, Ryan's mouth opened wide, his screams joining the chorus of shadows. I want to go home. The shadows seemed to seize upon his admission, swirling around him in a furious frenzy. Lisa could almost see their grinning faces, feasting on the fear of a child craving safety. Her heart sank. Were they getting to him? Ryan, listen to me. Lisa tugged him closer, their bodies trembling against the surge. I can't fight this alone. Think of the warmth of Grandma's hugs. Remember your friends. All that joy is still real. Don't let them pull you away. At first, it seemed futile. But then something in Ryan's eyes flickered a glimmer of recognition. Through the dark shadows, she watched as his resolve began to shift, ever so slightly, like a flower turning towards the sun. But even as that shine beckoned, the darkness retaliated. She lies. You are weak. Your memories cannot save you. The voices twisted into a furious roar, swarming around them like a tempest. Lisa pushed harder against the darkness, tears streaming down her face. No, love is power. Together we are stronger. We fight for each other. The air thickened, crackling with tension, as Ryan took a shaky breath. Together he whispered. Then, with a surge of energy, he squeezed her hand. She felt warmth radiate between them, an undeniable bond. Together, he echoed, more confident now. Lisa felt the shadows around them shift, hesitant in the face of their growing unity. But the figures from the dark howled, their fury rising again. You stubborn fools! Choose wisely, or perish in your futile defiance. For an instant, that spark of hope threatened to burst into light. But they didn't yet stand on solid ground. The shadows shrunk back momentarily, as if uncertain. Yet the weight of judgment still loomed. Failure was a price they could not afford. Then, before they could catch their breath, the ground beneath them began to tremble. Cracks spiderwebbed through the darkness, light seeping through the fissures, but that illumination felt like a distant memory. Mom, what is happening? Ryan gasped, fear rising anew as an angry roar echoed from below, louder, more furious. As Lisa watched in horror, the very shadows that trembled around them began to expand, morphing into bladed shapes, ready to strike. She understood now. The darkness was fighting back, and every shred of resistance was set to be met with brutal force. Run! She screamed, clutching Ryan's hand as she turned to flee. The darkness clawed at their ankles, trying to drag them down. We have to find the light. But the shadows were not finished with them yet. A howling wind rose up, sending their cries echoing into the abyss. And in that suffocating moment, everything blurred. Would they escape the darkness, or would it consume them whole? The only certainty was the terrifying revelation still echoing within the shadows. The price of their defiance was about to be revealed. The ground split beneath them, a jagged tear in reality that threatened to swallow them whole. Lisa's heart raced as panic flooded her veins. Keep running, she urged, dragging Ryan along, his feet stumbling behind her. The bladed shadows lunged forward, cutting through the air with a shrill, piercing scream. Each flash of the darkness felt like ice stabbing into her skin. The world around them twisted into a dark spiral, and with every step, the ground shook violently, as if trying to maintain its hold, unwilling to let them escape. Lisa could feel its pull, a magnetic force dragging them toward the jagged edges of despair. We need to find the light, she shouted, her voice barely above the turmoil that surrounded them. Ryan's breath came in ragged gasps, his grip on her hand slipping. She glanced back, the shadows swirling like a living nightmare, reaching with phantom fingers, each extension screaming and howling, a cacophony of chaos. Mom, I can't. It's too much, he cried, terror etching lines into his young face. Suddenly, A blinding flash erupted from the crevice, momentarily illuminating the horrific figures around them. Caught off guard, the shadows hesitated. In that instant, Lisa felt the warmth of hope flicker to life within her. "Look, we can reach it," she urged, pointing toward the glimmer that broke through the suffocating darkness. Ryan squinted, desperation in his eyes. But it hurts," he yelled, tears streaming down his cheeks, the light flickering like a candle in a storm. The shadows roared, their voices rising like an angry tide, threatening to drown out the last remnants of hope. "Don't listen to them," Lisa screamed, urgency lacing her tone. "You are stronger than this." The shadows lunged once more, teeth glinting menacingly as they swarmed closer. Lisa felt her feet move on instinct, driven by an unshakable desire to shield her child. They ran towards the light, but the shadows closed in, railing against their progress. Hands cold and skeletal gripped at their legs, biting into flesh, pulling at their very essence. Lisa's heart thudded painfully against her ribcage. "Hold on to my hand. No matter what, don't let go." As the ground shifted, beneath Ryan, a forming crack sent tremors through her. "Mom, I'm slipping," he yelled, fear cracking his voice as he dangled precariously. "No," Lisa screamed. She dropped to her knees, grasping him tightly, fearing that if she didn't hold on with all her strength, he might vanish into the shadows. The world spun, light and darkness battling for dominance, a war manifesting in every breath. But even in her determination, Lisa's resolve waned. Did she have the strength to save them both? The daunting thought crashed over her. "We'll get through this, I promise." She felt warmth from his small hand, that bond urging her forward, anchoring her in this bleakness. With her other hand, she reached into the growing brightness, feeling its warmth seep into her palms, tattooing her with sparks of hope. "Together we can do this," she shouted, feeling the darkness quiver, uncertain, surprised by their unity. Suddenly, a thunderous roar exploded from below, and the shadows recoiled, swirling backward, momentarily losing their grip. This was their chance. "Run, Ryan, run for the light." In a frenzied burst, they took off again, their legs pounding against the trembling ground, adrenaline surging. But an ominous whisper slithered through the air. "This isn't over when the shadows return. Will you race to the light or fall into the depth of despair?" The moment hung heavily, a clarity within the chaos. Lisa couldn't shake the dread in her gut. The darkness had drawn blood, and now it was watching closely, waiting for their next misstep as they burst through the crack. Emerging into a dim, flickering light, Lisa dared to breathe out relief. But it was short-lived. The light danced nervously, shadows casting ominous silhouettes, and the air hummed with foreboding. They had escaped one danger, but what awaited them here? "Where are we?" Ryan whispered, clutching her shirt as they both stepped cautiously into the unknown. And as the shadows closed the fissure behind them, sealing it tight, a chilling realization swept over them. It wasn't just the shadows that hunted them anymore. They were being watched. What more did the darkness have in store? Would their journey bring hope, or bury them deeper in despair? The flickering light cast strange shapes on the walls of the cavernous space they had stumbled into. Shadows danced menacingly, as if the very walls were alive, craving to swallow them whole. Lisa nudged Ryan forward, her instincts screaming that moving deeper into this light was the only way to find safety. "Stay close," she whispered, her voice strained, every word laced with urgency. They inched into the dimness, each step echoing like a heartbeat in the silence that swallowed them. The atmosphere felt heavy, saturated with a tension that made the hairs on Lisa's arms stand on end. She glanced around, straining her eyes to see every flicker of light casting a doubt, every sound a whisper of danger. "Mom?" Ryan's voice broke the oppressive stillness, tremors threading through his words. "What if they come here?" The unspoken fear hung in the air, thick and palpable. "We have to keep moving. We can't stand still," she replied, summoning courage she didn't quite feel. She brushed a lock of hair away from her face, feeling the sweat mixing with the dirt that clung to her skin. Her breath quickened at the thought of the shadows lurking behind as they proceeded. The space opened up unexpectedly, revealing a vast chamber that felt ancient, as if it had been hidden from the world for centuries. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like jagged teeth, dripping something dark and viscous. "What is this place?" Ryan muttered, his eyes wide, reflecting a mix of awe and fear. The answers he sought remained buried within the unknowns that swirled around them. "Be careful," Lisa said, scanning the area. Something wasn't right. There was a resonance, an unsettling pulse in the air. A chilling breeze brushed past her, and the temperature dropped as if signaling dread. The light strayed, revealing a sinister mural etched across the wall, figures twisted in agony, caught in a dance of despair. "Mom!" Ryan's voice turned shaky. "What are they doing?" The echoes of helpless screams seemed to weave through the air, and Lisa pressed her lips into a thin line. "It's just a picture, honey." Just as something shivered in the darkness behind them. A slithering sound, soft yet chilling. Lisa instinctively turned, and her heart stopped. The light danced erratically, illuminating a figure that stood just beyond the reach of the glow, a figure too tall, too thin, features a blur of shadow and malice. Its eyes gleamed an unnatural hue, reflecting the fear gripping her heart. "Run!" she cried, her voice breaking into a fractured panic. They turned, the echoes of their fleeing footsteps mingling with the guttural shadowy growls that grew louder behind them. "Don't look back!" The darkness lashed out, wrapping its tendrils around her feet. Lisa stumbled, yanking Ryan towards her just before he fell. They pushed forward, desperation fueling their escape as the light twisted and wavered unsteadily, threatening to vanish like a candle flickering in the wind. She could feel the shadows tugging at her once more, relentless and hungry, whispering promises of despair in imploring tones. "Stay close," she shouted again, feeling Ryan's small hand crushed within hers. The darkness yanked at their shadows, and with each breath, she feared that the very air would betray them, pulling them back into the crushing void. Fingers clawed at her shirt, a frigid grip of hopelessness. Ryan's sobs pierced through her resolve. "Mom, I'm scared." I know. The light was fading, dragging them toward an inevitable end. Then, suddenly, a voice thundered from deep within the shadows, booming and echoing, drowning out all other sounds. "This is your reckoning. You will not escape the shadows twice." Lisa's heart pounded louder than ever. The words swirled around her, and she recoiled, her mind racing. She had to find a way out, but what if this place was their prison? All at once, a brilliant flash lit the chamber, revealing the horror that awaited them in its wake. And as the shadows screamed once more, her stomach twisted in dread. Was this the true heart of their darkness, or merely the beginning? With the air thickening and the pulse of fear rising, the end felt closer than ever. Could they really outrun the terror? Or was there something lurking, something waiting to trap them yet again? The cavern shuddered as the sound of the voice receded into unsettling silence, leaving only the quiet thrum of Lisa's racing heart. The flash had vanished, plunging them back into a claustrophobic gloom. In the distance, she could still make out the shadows shifting, pulsating and deadlier than ever. "Mom, I'm scared." Ryan's voice trembled, each syllable bouncing off the rock. "Me too, honey," she whispered, forcing a brave veneer over her fear. But inside, dread twisted like a knife. The voice's threat hung heavy in her mind. They weren't just in danger. They were being hunted. "Let us find another way out," she urged, pulling Ryan along deeper into the darkness. The air was thick, suffocating, each breath laced with a feeling of being watched. Corners seemed to leer at them with malicious anticipation. Were they merely caged like animals, waiting for the shadows to strike? Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted. Lisa and Ryan stumbled as the floor seemed to ripple, like the surface of a disturbed pond. The shadows pulsed rhythmically, and she realized the mural on the wall had captured her attention again. The figures, now more defined in the dim light, appeared to be reaching out, their mouths frozen in silent cries, and their eyes hollow voids that seemed to beckon her nearer. What are they trying to say? Ryan's voice was barely more than a whisper, fragile in the overwhelming darkness. Feeling the pressure of their confines weighing upon her, Lisa shook her head. They're just paintings, just art. But as she said it, doubt wormed its way into her mind. Why did she feel the impulse to touch it? Maybe it was a clue or a warning. The shadows grew restless, swirling angrily as if sensing her hesitation. Out of instinct, she took a step back and turned toward the tunnel leading deeper into the cavern. A heaviness filled the air. The promise of despair was palpable, but they had no choice. Stay together, Ryan, she said, voice steadier than she felt. They shuffled into the tunnel, the light winking out momentarily as her heart thudded in her chest. The darkness roared with anger behind them. Stalactites loomed overhead, like sharpened knives waiting to drop. Their hurried footsteps echoed against the rock, a frantic heartbeat against the overwhelming quiet. Then, something shifted. Lisa halted, feeling a presence at her back, a cold breath ghosting over her shoulder. She turned, eyes wide with terror. Mom? Ryan's hand gripped hers so tightly it felt like it might break. She motioned for silence. In the oppressive dark, she finally admitted the truth to herself. The shadows were alive. They were sentient. As if hearing her thoughts, the shadows thickened, seeping off the walls, pulling her toward them hungrily. The air warped around them, pulsating like a living organism, and the whispering began. Voices intermingled, a cacophony that froze her blood. All of them crying out, weaving a tale of anguish and despair. Run! She screamed, the command tearing from her throat, a raw nerve against all she feared. Terror propelled them forward, though the voices clawed and clutched, trying to drag her back. An icy grip seized her ankle, yanking her down. Using every ounce of strength left, she tore free, pulling Ryan with her as they dashed into another chamber. As the flickering light returned, she gasped, horrified at the sight that met her eyes. The figures from the mural were now standing around them, not lifeless but twisted, their forms grotesque and racked with pain. Each face was one of torment, mouths silently wailing in an endless loop, living echoes of the danger that surrounded them. Mom, what do we do? Ryan's voice cracked with panic, eyes darting around wildly, trying to take it all in, and from the corner of the chamber, a shape emerged, looming larger than all the others, its featureless face tilted down as if it could smell their fear. The shadows twitched and curled around it like a living cloak. Lisa's heart slammed against her ribcage. We can't stay here. We have to find a way out. But as they retreated into the darkness, the shape followed, laughing silently as it fractured into smaller shadows, surrounding them once more. Run, she breathed, knowing the choices they had made shattered any illusion of safety. Far ahead in the maze of darkness, a sliver of light flickered like a distant star, calling them while the shadows shrieked in protest. Would it lead them to freedom or deeper into madness? With a surge of determination, Lisa held her breath and lunged toward the beacon, hoping against hope it was not a trap. But the darkness hissed like a slithering serpent, promising retribution. What awaited them in the light? Would it reveal salvation or more horrors? The moment hung thick with desperation, the shadowy laughter echoing all around them. Fear clouded her mind, closing in as they sprinted headlong into the unknown. Would the light guide them or consume them whole? In a final surge of fear and desperation, Lisa clutched Ryan's hand, racing towards the beacon of light. The shadows shrieked behind them, their voices a menacing chorus that echoed through the cavern, each cry a reminder of the malice lurking just out of sight. Lisa did not stop, did not look back, and as the light grew closer, she felt a potent blend of hope and dread settling in her chest. It's so bright," Ryan shouted as they broke through the oppressive darkness. The light washed over them like warm water, enveloping their bodies in an illuminating embrace that felt almost sacred. Lisa's heart soared. They had made it, hadn't they? But the shadows clawed at the edges of the light, their howls growing more desperate, more furious. They wanted in. They wanted to claim what they had lost. "Keep moving," Lisa urged, pushing forward with all her force. The brilliant light began to pulse like a heartbeat, but it felt alive, vibrating with an energy that resonated deep within her. "There's a way out, Ryan." The ground shifted underneath them, a tremor signifying that the shadows were regrouping, desperate to reclaim their prey. "Will it hold?" Lisa thought with a shiver, panic cascading through her veins. With every step, the light seemed to stretch toward them, brightening as if sensing their resolve. The murmurs of the shadows faded momentarily, unable to cross this sparkling boundary that separated them from the haunting. Suddenly, Lisa stumbled, her foot catching on something, a rough-hewn stone that jutted up through the ground. But Ryan held tight to her hand, anchoring her through the moment of weakness. "Together," he shouted, urgency rippling through his tiny voice. "Together," Lisa echoed, pulling herself up with all the strength she could muster. They tilted their heads back, looking at each other, the shadows still swirling in the darkness behind, desperate and looming. But they were not afraid anymore. They refused to be afraid. Together, they bolted toward the light once more. Energy coursed through them, a shocking reminder of the bond they had fought for, the laughter, the memories, the love that anchored their souls together. The darkness howled in futile rage, thrashing against the boundary, scratching at the edges of their safety as they approached the blinding light. Lisa began to notice whispers trailing off the edges, a disjointed knell of lost souls. Faces flickered, an echo of those who had succumbed to fear, ensnared forever in shadows. Yet through the overwhelming anguish, there were threads of warmth, memories of hope threading through the air. "Look, Mom!" Ryan shouted, pointing ahead. "It's the door." There it stood, a massive archway shimmering with golden light, beckoning them forward like a moth to a flame. In that moment, time stood still. The shadows roared tirelessly, their torment reverberating around them. "Don't stop," Lisa shouted as she pulled Ryan toward the safe haven. "Keep going. We can do this." With each powerful stride, the whispers behind them grew more frantic, shadows clawing at their heels, but they pushed forward. As their feet crossed the threshold of the doorway, a wave of warmth engulfed them, a brilliant blast of light that felt like home, like freedom. They tumbled through, falling onto soft grass. Sunlight burst upon them like blessings. They gasped, the air clean, fresh, full of vibrant life. The store was harsh and bright, but it was a comfort in comparison to the nightmare they had just escaped. "Did we make it?" Ryan panted, tear-streaked face shining with wonder. Lisa caught her breath, heart racing, mind racing, but clarity settling in. I think we did. We broke free." The shadows screamed from the other side, but it was a far-off echo, their dark tendrils unable to breach the light. As they lay there, bathed in the warmth of the sun, Lisa held Ryan close, knowing that the battle might have just begun, but they would face it together. They had risen against the darkness. They had fought for each other. Eventually, the whispers faded into a quiet murmur, the shadows retreating to the recesses where they belonged, held at bay by the shared strength of love, family, and unity. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, and the promise of a new dawn emerged, painting the sky with colors so vivid, so warm that they nearly glowed. Lisa looked down at Ryan, his eyes locked onto hers, sparkling with life and light. Together, forever, they promised, sealing it with a smile, determined to keep the darkness at bay. Lisa squeezed Ryan's hand, feeling lighter, unfettered by burdens of fear. "Let us get home," she said with a confidence that warmed her heart even more. With that, they stood and began to walk side by side, stepping boldly into their lives once again. Now, as this thrilling adventure reaches its conclusion, it's time to take action. If you loved this story, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel. Hit that bell icon so you won't miss our upcoming exclusive tales. Smash the like button now to boost the algorithm and help more fans find this spine-chilling content. Don't sit back, flood the comments section with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about the ending. And most importantly, share this story with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread the word. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel. So let's make it happen together.